Hello, my name is Katri Ghanshyam, and my topic of presentation is the beat generation and its influence. This is my introduction. Table of content. In this presentation, I will discuss about what is beat generation and its origin, the important writer and their work, and the influence of beat generation and conclusion. The Beat Generation was a literary subculture movement started by the group of authors whose work explored and influenced American culture and politics in the post-war era. The bulk of their work was published and popularized by the silent generations in 1950s, better known as beatniks. The central elements of beat culture are the rejection of a standard narrative values, making a spiritual quest, the exploration of American and Eastern religion, uh, the rejection of economic materialism, explicit portrayals of human condition, experimentation with psychedelic drugs, and sexual liberation and exploration. The origin of Beat Generation. In 1914 and 1948, John Holmes, in his interview of about his novel Go, he said about his character that this is really a beat generation, and from there the beat culture started to recognize this beat generation, and then uh, the interviewer wrote this beat generation in his article, and then the origin of the word beat are obscure, but the meaning is only too clear to most Americans. So more than mere weariness, it implies the feeling of having been used, of being raw. It evokes a sort of a neckness of mind and ultimately of soul, a feeling of being reduced to the bedrock of consciousness. In short, it means being undramatically pushed up against the wall of oneself. A man is a beat when he goes broke and wagers the sum of his resources on a single number, and the young generation has done that from earlier youth. The word beat is also said to be derived from the word beatitude. uh, the people constitute this group called the Beat Generation. It refers to a group of friends, the writer Ginsberg, Carr, Kerouac, and Burroughs, and their other friends who had worked together on poetry, prose from the mid 40s to late 50s. Those are the three important writers of the Beat generation. They are considered as the pioneers of the Beat generation. First is Jack Kerouac, who wrote the novel On the Road, and in this novel, he wrote about his experience of traveling across the America with his friends, and he created this novel. The second is William S. Burroughs, and he is famous for his novel Neck the Lunch. And in this novel, he wrote various fiction stories, and then he combined it's more like a non-linear type of stories that is combined in this fictional work. And the third is Allen Ginsberg. He wrote the poem Howl, and it is a free verse poem, and is the he took very liberty in this poem, creating this poem. The influence of Beat Generation. The writers of Beat Generation wrote about escaping society. The confessional writing style used by the Beats to differentiate themselves from the American mainstream indicates a break from their predecessor. Instead of trying to forge a new political or economic position, the Beats are more intent on escaping from one. As the outsider of the lost generation, unable to identify their place in what they perceive as a seemingly aggressive and stifling social ethos. Beach rise rely instead on their rebellion against that ethos. The era was after World War, and the economy was started to stable in America, and then the new generation of 40s and 50s, they tried to escaping the social values and the economy. The madness in writing. By adopting the mad persona for different characters throughout their writing, beat writers use insanity as a cultural site of ideological contestation and as the fundamental break from the American ethos that Metal discusses. The beats do not strive to uphold one single ideology, but to instead reject the prevailing one. They use characters that implies outsider status in their very cultural stereotypes. The madmen launch figure expels from the mainstream society can provide new insights about problems facing society because such people are at times unable to think in conventional ways. Their ideas, therefore, are often disjointed and non-linear. As I said in the previous slide, the a novel Naked Lunch is that follows the similar pattern of writing, and the writers mostly wrote about madness and different they differentiate their characters from the society. Isolation. Despite their idealization of the madman, Beat writer also demonstrated persistent anxiety surrounded this figure throughout their writing, and particularly a fear of permanent isolation. In Go, a novel by John Cleland Holmes, the crazy character Walter states that his neighbors are trying to get me taken away. Of course, the mainstream seeking to neutralize the threat that unconventional thinking present actually throw the mad from society itself. Unlike the beat counterculture that simply reject a previous community but cannot truly escape it, the neurotic finds himself trapped within a psych ward or insane asylum, places that offer no escape and no connection to society at large. So the beat culture created people who were different from the society, but yet they are not different. They are not. Divided in but the society they started to rejected them as they were different from the normal society social norms, so and this also the beat generation also create the influence the hippie culture also, and those people were often uh, drug addict, and they created their own way of looking toward the life, and they escape from their home and they travel, and they are addicted with various drugs, and they are from different they follow the different cultural values also. uh, apart from this difference from the mainstream culture and the beat generation, there is also this that the woman's place in beat culture, that the mostly women's were just uh, from they were very distant from this. They followed the beat culture, but they were not completely in that. For Joyce Johnson, this is the female writer. The whole beat scene had very little to do with the participation of women as artists themselves. The real communication was going on between the men, and the women were there as onlookers. So this says very much about the woman's place in this beat culture. This talented woman, some of whom wrote incredible and revolutionary prose, were the wives barely acknowledged by their male peers. So that was the position of women's and women's writers in the beat culture. The photo is of Joyce Johnson, who wrote the novel Minor Characters, and it was popular very much. This is my work cited. Thank you.
Ghanshyam, my question is that what is the legacy of the beat generation today? How has its influence continued to shape American literature and culture in the 20th century, 21st century?
The beat culture provided the way of looking to the new generation that was after the post World War, and they abandoned their culture, and it was evolving throughout the World War. The American culture was evolving. That they already had. Progressed in their cultural values, but after the post World War, and then the economy started to stabilize, the new generation started to look way with the life with a new way, and they started to abandon the past values, and they became travelers and free-minded, and they thought about economy and sexuality in free manners.
Sir, I have posted other question. Ghanshyam, what is your opinion about the female role in beat generation?
The female role was the outlookers only. They now from the side they looked this beat generation. They were part of it, but unrecognizedly. In my last slide, I said that it was that the female writers were merely recognized. They are not that famous, but some of the female writers also became famous in that beat culture, and they wrote about the literature, and they became famous also.